is Joe. So Joe is the co-founder and managing director of Six Barrels Soda, based here in Wellington, of course. And just giving you a little bit of a rundown of how his career has progressed up until this moment. So he started his career as a cocktail bartender at some of the top bars in Melbourne, London and Paris. And then he moved back to Wellington to open a native plant-filled outdoor caravan cafe in in Cuba Street. And later a Californian writers retreat style diner in Newtown before starting Six Barrel Soda in 2012. And he's here today to share his journey with us. So please welcome Joe.
Great. Well, that was half my speech, so I've got a little bit more to talk about, I guess. It's a funny time to be talking about honesty. I think we feel like we keep hearing phrases like post-truth politics and fake news, and it feels like honesty is having this kind of crisis. But politicians have always lied, and the news isn't fake. So, and I think honesty is also more than just the opposite of what Donald Trump says. Honesty is like a transparency and an openness and kind of an understanding of like a diversity of people's experiences and the way they communicate those. And I think we're seeing more and more people sharing their experiences, both good and bad. So we're seeing people telling stories of through movements like Black Lives Matter and Me Too, of going, hey, these things are happening to us and it's terrible, and people are listening more and more, which is quite crucial as well. You've got to do both things, right? And through social media, we can also share our stories a lot easier than ever before. We can share the good times as individuals and organizations, and it's important to remember that it's pretty much only the good times on there. You know, there's also the hard things that we don't share so much. So I think it's always important to remember that we're not our Instagram, and that other people aren't their own either. Traditionally, as business leaders, there's this idea that you're meant to be this kind of macho, like smash the competition and fight your way to the top model. But more and more, I think we're seeing that doesn't work as individuals, and it doesn't work as businesses either. We kind of treat, like legally and financially, we treat businesses as their own entities. And then when we try and run the businesses, they're often run as these like marauding armies rather than these kind of interconnected parts of our community. So I think we're abandoning that model for more of a transparent, kind of empathetic sharing model, which is wonderful. So today I'm going to share a few of our stories that you might not have seen on Instagram. Don't forget to follow us on there for the kind of glossy version. So my background isn't in branding and marketing. I come from a hospitality background. And hospitality is this kind of weird industry where the working conditions are pretty bad, the hours are terrible, you get treated pretty poorly by everyone, and there's no money in it. But you still find these people doing it, and what you find is these kind of really passionate, creative people. So it's a really kind of inspiring industry to work in or be around, if you can put up with the avalanche of awful parts. So one thing I've been learning about over the last few years, learning about branding and marketing, is origin stories and how brands come to be and how people come to do what they end up doing. And I went to this talk a little while ago, and Monique Fiso was talking there. You guys know who she is? She's like this incredible chef who's about to open a restaurant in Wellington called Hiekai. She's like been on Netflix and stuff. She's amazing. And she was talking about how she came to have this kind of passion for cooking and food. And she told this story of being a little girl or a young girl and peeling potatoes with her grandma while all her siblings and cousins and stuff were playing outside. And it was like this beautiful story. It kind of was like her passion for cooking started there, and it was this providing for a community. And I was like, man, it's lovely, you know, like got a bit teary, and I was like, this is, you know, I've been making drinks for like 18 years or something for my job, and how did I get into that? You know, how was I wish I had this kind of one moment that was like my thing. And then I remembered that the night that I became the rocket fuel king of Tauranga. So I worked at a petrol station in high school, and I worked late one night and got home, and there was a party going on down the street, and all my friends were there, but I didn't have any booze. I was like 17, and so I was like, oh, well, I'll make some rocket fuel, right? And most kids, when they make rocket fuel, you know, you can steal like a centimetre of your parents' booze from each bottle. But my house was a bit different because my mum had an illegal still. So we had just like a lot of booze. And she had this whole cupboard that was like liqueurs, like crazy different liqueurs. And so I made this like just monster bottle of rocket fuel, like a centimetre from each bottle, but there's like, you know, there's 100 bottles. So, and I got to this party, and I got there, and all my friends had like run out of booze because it was 10 o'clock or whatever. And then I turn up with like a flagon of liquor, and I saved the party. Now, it's not as romantic as Monique's story, but we've all kind of got these things, I think, that kind of form the people and careers that we are, and, you know, some make you laugh and some make you cry. So I grew up in Tauranga in the 90s, and it was this kind of conservative, homogenous kind of place, and I was never really that into it. And I moved down to Wellington for uni and had this kind of cosmopolitan awakening. You know, there's all this culture and creativity here, and it was amazing. And so instead of, you know, getting blackout drunk on some kid's farm, we were like going to cafes and like writing poetry. And it was lovely. And one of the cafes that we used to go to was this place called Eva Dixon's, which was this super cool kind of place that had this kind of bohemian vibe. And incidentally, where we ended up opening, it was the same site we ended up opening Six Barrel 12 years later. After that, did some bartending in Melbourne, Byron Bay, Paris, and London. Oh yeah, so I'm in London and I'm working at this bar, fancy cocktail bar, won like world's best bar a couple of times. And there was the boss came in one day, and he wasn't around much, but he came in one day, and I was like, how you doing, Charles? You know, what's going on? And he was like, oh, I've been a bit naughty. And I was like, this is great, you know, this is gonna be good. I was like, what have you done? What's happened? He was like, I bought a Maserati. I was like, you bought a Maserati, dog? Like, I was this earnest socialist kid, and this guy's buying a car that was 3 years my salary. You know, I was like, this isn't quite right. And around about the same time, I got a letter from Mike, like a letter. Mike was my oldest friend, and it was a pitch for this business he wanted to start, and he wanted me to come back and run it. So I was like, yeah, this is great, let's go. So I left London, left the Maserati boss. We didn't end up getting that business off the ground, but we started doing stuff anyway. And the first business we opened was Kreuzberg Summer Cafe. Did anyone ever go there? Yes. So Kreuzberg was this crazy kind of, you know, we were young, right? So it was this like Berlin kind of cafe by the river, colorful, lots of like gypsy jazz music, and it was pretty wild, and it was cool, and it had its moment, and it taught us lots about running businesses. Two quick things that it taught us were: don't ever call your business Kreuzberg Summer Cafe, and don't open an outdoor business in Wellington. It was pretty good. It was fun. And a couple of years after that, we opened Monterey, which was, Newtown had this kind of still has this kind of amazing creative and cultural vibe, and it's like nowhere else in Wellington. And there was nowhere really in the evenings at the time to go and hang out. Like there was People's Coffee, which was kind of like a daytime hub, but then we wanted to open something that was a bit more of a nighttime place where you could go and hang out with your friends. And there was just weird bars there with funny furniture. And so it was this Californian writer's retreat style bar where you could draw and read poetry, and it was lovely. Then a couple of years after that, oh no, look how pixelated that is. We started Six Barrel Soda. And pretty quickly we realized that it was a different beast. With Kreuzberg and Monterey, it was kind of cool because I was like literally the face. I was there every day, so I could talk to every single customer, which means it was easy to kind of communicate some of those values of the company and what we were trying to do, and build it up that way. With Six Barrel, we had this kind of it took on a life of its own, and we had this wider audience and wider reach that you couldn't just talk to every single person every time. So for us, it was about working out how we can kind of communicate some of those values and stay accountable to them as well. It's pretty easy to just go, it's this far off thing. Let's just put whatever in and do what, abandon all your values pretty quickly. So the few ways we did that. One was we've always done our own communications rather than just getting an agency to do it. So it means we can actually talk to our customers through social media, through newsletters, that sort of thing. And two was we opened a soda shop. Because, we make soft drinks, right? And soft drinks are this traditionally kind of murky category. You don't really know what's in the bottle. You don't really want to know what's in the bottle a lot of the time. And, there's hundreds of brands, but they're all owned by two companies. And for us, we wanted to kind of show how we were different by opening a shop that you could come in, you could see the stuff getting made, and it's pretty easy to be honest and transparent about what's going into your drinks when you're like literally putting them into the drinks in front of people. It's kind of hard to hide that stuff. And then, I'm sorry that there's two different Kendrick references in one thing, but they both kind of work, I think. So Six Barrel was like a smash hit from the start. It was crazy. We had queues down the stairs every day to get into the shop. We had awesome customers calling us and saying, hey, we want to stock your drinks. We didn't have to do any sales. We had media calling us and saying, we want to do an article on you. And it was great. It was cool. It was pretty easy once we got it off the ground. We weren't making any money, but that's the other stuff was easy. And then we got a call from one of the big companies saying, hey, we want to, we're interested in buying you, pretty early. And we were like, this is great, we were shopping for batches and retirement planning, and we went back and forth with them for a while, maybe a month or two, and finally they got around to making an offer, and it was low. It was 15% of what we were kind of thinking might be about right. And we were gutted, right? This is awful. And we went away and we were like, oh, so we said no. We went away and we were like, that was pretty rough. What are we doing? But it taught us a bunch of things. It taught us, one, that we weren't worth what we thought. We were probably worth what they thought. And that it was going to be a lot harder than just selling a few things and getting bought out. And and it kind of taught us what we need to do to kind of actually build a real company. And it also made us realize that, you know, we didn't really want that anyway. That wasn't what we started doing it for. You know, we didn't want to be the Maserati guy. And, you know, we realized it was only, I don't know, this was maybe a year in or something, and we still had heaps to offer the company. We still had heaps that we wanted to do with it. And so that was humbling but good. And around about the same time, a little bit after, I got this email from my friend in Melbourne, and her girlfriend was working at this printing company where they, you know, print posters and things, and they were printing the posters for the launch of this brand. So they hadn't launched or anything yet, so we got a good in pretty early, and I just sat there looking at it for a minute, and I was just like, I couldn't process it. It was like, do you guys know about magic eyes? It was like looking at a magic eye. I was like, what is that thing? And it wasn't just that it was a competitor, because that's fine. It was just that we'd worked really hard to build this kind of unique brand that was, you know, we basically created this category and this look and everything from the ground up. And then these guys just totally copied it from our point of view. And so I went away and sent them this cease and desist letter that was basically like, stop doing this or we'll rain hell on you. But what I didn't realize was that the guy who started this company, his whole career, he'd been working for this company who ripped off electrical products. So they make like Dyson-looking vacuum cleaners and things. So when you're a full-time professional scumbag, you have really good IP lawyers. So their lawyers were better than my lawyers, and we decided to, the advice that I got was, we might beat them, it'd be 50 to 80 grand, and we probably wouldn't get the money back, and it would take a year of like just awful slog in the courts. So I kind of went away, I was like, okay, so we're just gonna have to let them do this. And I went through all the stages of like grief. It was like, my child has been taken from me. I didn't actually, I was just angry and had this like murderous desire for revenge. Trying to find like gang contacts to kind of take out knees and things. But it made us realize we went away and we're like, we've got this kind of authentic story. We actually like have made this product and we do this thing ourselves. These guys were just contract packing and, you know, they weren't even touching the product. So it just made us realize that authenticity is so important and honesty is so important that you can't just kind of fake it. So, although you can kind of get away with it a little bit. And we just needed to communicate that better, and that a brand is more than just the packaging. This was meant to be the last slide. And then we got this one. So my friend sent me this fridge magnet from the States, and he thought it kind of summed up my vibe. Which I should maybe have been insulted by, but I think I wasn't really. New Zealand businesses, traditionally what happens, we go overseas and we go to trade shows and things, and where American businesses come in and they're like, we're awesome, like we're changing the world, our product's so incredible, you've never tried anything like it. There's this thing that New Zealand businesses do where they go, oh, what do you reckon? It's pretty good, eh? And New Zealand Trade and Enterprise hate it because, you know, it's not really how you're meant to do things. But I think it's this kind of lovely sentiment because most things are just pretty good. And if we keep shooting for perfection and expecting perfection, we're just going to be always disappointed. And I think for small businesses going up against big companies, that kind of honesty in our limitations is part of how we are authentic brands. I mean, like, think about the work that you do. Is it like completely revolutionary, or is it just the best you can do at this point? Because that's fine. That's all I got.